Hello, grade 10 students. Good morning, good afternoon, and good day to everyone. For this second quarter, I know that some of the lessons might be challenging or difficult for the students. So I will try my best to come up with learning videos that would aid you, help you, and guide you to understand more about the different lessons that we have for second quarter. And as much as I could, I'll do it in the simplest way possible. For the second quarter, let's start with the topic observing the language of research, campaign, and advocacies. This is also your target for the first week of the second quarter. Your main target or the learning competency that you should achieve for this first week is to observe the language of research, campaign, and advocacies. So let's start with what research is. Yes, what is research? So Good defines research as a careful, critical, disciplined inquiry varying in technique and method according to the nature and conditions of the problem identified, directed toward the clarification or resolution, or both, of a problem. I believe research is the key to development in various aspects of our human life. So all of the things that we are enjoying in this age, in this era, all of those things are actually products of research. You might be enjoying 2 hours or 3 hours in front of your smartphone or Android phone, and I will tell you that those devices are, of course, products of careful and critical research. As we go on with our lives, it's a little bit magical how people learn to develop and uplift the way they do things or the way they carry on with their everyday living. And I mentioned that it's quite magical, and it actually is. But at the same time, considering that those things that make our lives easier are products of research. So research should go through a process, a process of scientific inquiry. And so you'll be reminded with what scientific method is. Before we go to the different processes involved in research, let me give you another definition of research from another brilliant author, of course. So we have in here Aquino. Aquino has a more detailed definition of research. He says that research is simply the systematic search for pertinent information of a specific topic or problem. What are the most famous researches that you have heard of? I've actually heard of students from City College of Angeles who conducted a team of students, and they actually conducted a research to know how children are learning Kapampangan language. Maybe you heard that Kapampangan language is dying, and so being a part of this community, you have this responsibility to know what is happening to the language and why do some children or why do some parents neglect how important it is to learn the Kapampangan language. So a group of students from City College of Angeles, they came up with this app called Sing Sing, and in that app they actually aided the students to be more interested in learning Kapampangan. So they learn Kapampangan, they learn counting and basics of learning a language or basics of learning Kapampangan through that app. Another group of students from Holy Angel University, they conducted a research on how to detect fake news. And I've heard from one of Okay, before we discuss the three major types of research, let me go back to what research process is. A research process would normally start by asking a question. You need to have an inquiry in mind. You need to have an inquiry at hand. You might be asking a question on how effective the teachers are in conducting their classes using specific strategies. You might be having this question if requiring students to do an oral presentation would actually have an impact on how they learn or how they do public speaking. Students have a lot of questions in mind. Some of my students conducted a research on the use of higher order thinking skills or HOTS in doing oral presentation. Other students have simple research problem or inquiry on the current status of the reading program being implemented in our school, Rafael Elisati Memorial High School. You might be having a problem on how the type of sectioning being used in our school create an impact on how students learn or how students make themselves comfortable in their learning environment, because we can have homogeneous or heterogeneous type of groupings to arrange the students into different classes. So there are a lot of questions that you can have as your research problem or as your research topic. I can tell you a lot of stories, but our time would be insufficient to tell you the research topics or how my other students dealt with their research presentation. It would be a spoiler on your part. So I would like my students also to experience conducting their research and gathering information to come up with answers or solutions to a problem at hand. But after formulating an inquiry in mind, you need to identify the important factors. I don't want my students to be having a topic, just for example, you might be having a topic on why shouldn't our school improve the way they cater to students, like providing an air conditioned room. Would students have higher grades if their rooms are air conditioned? What would be the solution on that? Of course, the solution would be for our school to have comfortable learning environment for the students, but that would require our school, and that would also require additional expense on the students and the parents part. So it might be a little impossible if you need to start with a research problem like that. If you are a member of an organization or an agency and you'd like to conduct a research, or you want to prove that a good working environment with proper ventilation would provide more employees a comfortable working area and so they can be more productive, maybe you can start with a type of research. But there are um, more research topics that would require you to gather more information, and there are a lot of research topics in our community that we need to attend to before those types of topic that I mentioned earlier. So you start by asking question, you identify the important factors, and then you formulate your hypothesis. A hypothesis is a tentative conclusion or answer to a specific question raised at the beginning of your investigation. It is an educated guess about the answer to specific questions There are different forms of hypothesis. One is in the operational form and the other is in null form. The operational form of a hypothesis is stated in the affirmative, while the null form is stated in the negative. The operational form states that there is a difference between two phenomena, while the null form states that there is no difference between two phenomena. Once you start conducting your research, then you will be guided more on how to form your operational hypothesis or your null hypothesis, or I could provide you another video with more detailed explanation and a lot of examples on formulating your hypothesis. After formulating your hypothesis, you need to collect relevant information. In collecting relevant information, you have this goal in mind that you will find a set of workable and effective solutions to your problem. So after you collected the information, there is another critical process, which is testing your hypothesis, and that would involve the basics of statistics. You still need to learn another subject, which is statistics. And I tell you, students, a lot of students love this subject and you love to learn more. Maybe you love to have a little of a challenging or difficult time with this subject, but your knowledge of statistics would help you a bunch. After testing your hypothesis, then work with uh, you have to work with your hypothesis. And after working with hypothesis, those two processes are critical, and there should be a separate discussion on how one could possibly test hypothesis and work with a set of hypotheses. There should be examples for that. For now, you just need to learn the process, and more detailed explanation of those two processes will be on a separate video. Here, after working with the hypothesis, you have to reconsider the theory and you go back to asking new questions. Now we'll have discussion on the three major types of research. Research is divided into three major types. We have qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods type of research. What is a quantitative research? So quantitative research is characterized through the use of a deductive approach, aimed in proving, disproving, or lending credence to an existing set of theories. This type of research will definitely involve measuring variables, testing relationships, revealing patterns, correlation, or causal relationship. Now, my students are having a lot of questions in mind. What do we mean by variables? What do we mean by testing relationships? What types of patterns do we need to reveal? What is correlation? Oh, what example can we have for a causal relationship? Now, quantitative research, the first thing that you need to remember is that this type of research would require students commonly to come up with a normative survey. When I asked my students to conduct their research for 2 months, I actually gave them 2 months, or some students started a little late with conducting their research paper or checking the other contents of their paper. They were only given a month to complete everything. So the simplest method that we had was quantitative research. And how do we gather data using this type of research design? I just require them to have a normative survey, and the simplest would be to give questionnaire to their respondents. They gave questionnaire using the questionnaire is a Likert scale, and they just